There we go. It looks like the mic is unmuted. If you can hear me, drop drop a one in the comments for me. Just want to be sure that we're live. I know the mic here is on, but my internet has been a bear the past couple of days. So if you can hear me, do drop a one in the comments. I want to be sure I'm live. And if this is your first time meeting me, I'm Dr. Twanna Carter, and as a career coach, I empower stressed, busy women executives who are tackling the imposter syndrome, self criticism, and doubt to help them alleviate their stress so that they can find peace of mind and focus on excelling in their careers. So I just want to be sure that everybody can hear me. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today's topic, right? We've got a good one for you. It is about the importance of setting boundaries. So, I don't know how many of you have anxiety, but I know for me, I have social anxiety. This was a big one for me. It was huge, big, 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 huge. When we're talking about unlocking the secret to managing anxiety, setting boundaries is one of those things that you have to do. Want to be sure I've got some. Yes, my comments are on over here so I can see everybody. So definitely, when you don't have boundaries, we'll talk about that as we go along. It is very difficult to have anxiety and not have boundaries. But some of us are people pleasers. We're just some of us are born that way. Some of us are raised that way, and I know that oftentimes women are socialized to take care of other people to make sure they have things first, and we will often bring that into the workplace where we're the ones doing everything. Hey, if you need something done, she'll do it. She'll do it. She'll do it. She'll do it. And people start crossing your boundaries, and you start people pleasing or feeling like you can't say no because you don't want to disappoint people. And it can just be a whole hot mess once you're tired of people invading your space because they're crossing your boundaries, right? And so that's what we're talking about tonight, to unlock how to unlock the secret to anxiety relief by exploring the power of setting healthy boundaries in your life. Okay. So establishing boundaries is not only crucial for self care, but it's also crucial for fostering positive relationships. Certainly for you, if you've been the one where it feels like people are always stepping over you, ignoring what you need, not attending to your needs, certainly over time that starts to wear. But by effectively communicating your boundaries and having people basically respecting your own needs first and then the needs of others, you can actually reduce anxiety and create a space for peace and harmony in your life. So let's go ahead and talk about the importance of setting boundaries. So the first step towards anxiety relief is really reflect on your needs and your values without someone telling you what they think your needs are and without putting everybody else's needs ahead of yours. Really take that step back. So thank you, Maria. Maria says she can hear me. I appreciate that. Thank you. Where are you hopping on from, Maria? I love to figure out where people are hopping on from. It's time for me to travel again. I can feel it. Actually, I'm going to Alabama next week. So that's a trip, but I've got several others planned, right? And so certainly, take a moment to really consider the different areas of your life, like your relationships and your work life and your professional space. Really identify the specific situations where you feel your boundaries. Oh, my dad's in Phoenix. Yay. Maria said she's in Phoenix. Yes. My dad and my brother are in Phoenix. So I tried to schedule a trip into Phoenix. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to slide it in August. We'll see. We'll see how things work out, right? And so definitely, when you're thinking about setting boundaries, what are those spaces where you just feel like your boundaries have been crossed in the past, or where you just need to be clear on what the expectations are, set the clearer limits, right? If you want to know, like, how do I know I need a boundary? Think about this. When have you felt uncomfortable with either someone saying something to you or requesting something of you or just telling you to do something? Or, have you done things or said yes to things and then felt resentful? afterwards because you're like, I don't really want to do this, right? Or have there been times where you felt powerless? You can see people coming. I I used to work a part-time job at Walmart when my daughter needed to take a trip to New York, and I just didn't have the money to cover it. I just recently bought a house, all my money going into the house. So I worked part-time for Walmart. And I remember that there were two managers, and I could see them like calculating. Anytime they saw me, they would like calculate like how much work can I get out of her, because I'm prior military. I was very senior in my career, and when they told me to do something, I just did it. It's just follow through. You just do it. And so when I see them coming up, I already knew that something was coming down the pipe. Anybody out there feel that way? Someone in your office comes your way, or I had a boss that had a certain tone to his voice. I could know shenanigans were coming. I could see it coming a mile away. Anybody out there have that happen before? So Maria says, yes, you can either see it in their eyes or you could hear it in their tone that they're about to ask you something that you don't want to do, but you feel like you can't say no. It's like, and you if you're like me, because I had social anxiety, it's like my words would be frozen in my throat. I just could not say no. But then afterwards, I would be resentful. Like, I don't want to do this. And it kind of makes you feel powerless, right? And so basically, you need to recognize all of those areas. Recognizing these areas is so essential so that you can reduce anxiety that's being caused by a lack of boundaries. And so I'd certainly understand that, Maria. It comes, right? You're like, oh, here it is, right? And so, that's what we're talking about, like identifying those areas when you feel that way. That tells you the spaces where you do need to create boundaries. And so when we're talking about, what about defining your boundaries? Once you've identified what your needs are, then it's clearly time to start defining those boundaries and be specific about what behavior is acceptable and what is not. And again, even your workplace and your relationships, be specific, because there are some people who revel in ambiguity. If you're ambiguous, they will see things their way every single time. So you need to be specific. And I know this is really challenging for those of us who have been people pleasers in a previous life. I call myself a recovering people pleaser, right? Or really, if your boundaries have just become enmeshed with other folks, it's very difficult to say, you know what, this is unacceptable. I remember my kids went to a private school, and every time they needed a kid to remember something to speak at a function, they kept choosing my daughter. And I could see that her classmates were feeling some kind of way, like, why is she always chosen? And for me, as a parent who was just tired, and I finally spoke up and I said, there are other kids here who are just as talented. And what the teacher said was, yeah, that's true. But we know if we give it to you, we don't have to practice anything with your daughter. You're going to do all the work and be sure she knows it. Right. So that was crossing my boundaries. Basically, if I give it to another child, I got to work with them to be sure that parent's going to do what they're supposed to do, or I have to do it. But I don't mind tossing it to your child, and I don't mind inconveniencing you consistently. And it will be these long speeches, not a couple of lines, but long speeches. And, my daughter and I be going over and over and over because I didn't want her to look bad and I didn't want her to feel embarrassed. And finally, I had to speak up. But people will continue stepping over your boundaries. Again, think about what makes you uncomfortable, right? Versus comfortable. That's where you need a boundary. If you feel resentful after you say yes, or you feel resentful because you're being asked, that's a place where you define a boundary and where you need to put the boundary. Something also makes you feel less than, or if you feel used, or if you feel dismissed, or if you're feeling taken advantage of, that's a place for you to put a good boundary in, right? That space right there, because you shouldn't have to go through your life being inconvenienced or feeling like you're being used or dismissed. You know, I finally got to a place where my favorite saying when I was learning how to set boundaries in my life was, If we both got to go away unhappy, why do I always have to be the one going away unhappy? It is okay. It really is okay. We'll talk about this later. It's okay to make people unhappy if you are maintaining your boundaries. I know that's a tough pill to swallow because most of us that are people pleasers, we're tuned to not making people unhappy. We're tuned to not making other people uncomfortable. But when you start setting boundaries, you will be making some people uncomfortable. You probably be ticking some folks off too because they no longer have access to you or your money or your time, right? And so they feel some kind of way about it, but it's okay. You have felt some kind of way about it all this time and you've been okay too, quasi okay. So that's all right. Okay. Ensure that though that your boundaries are realistic and reasonable, and this really depends on where you are. Setting boundaries in your workplace may be a little different than setting boundaries in your home, right? And on some aspects, obviously, setting boundaries is a little easier with folks that you don't have an emotional attachment to. Okay, it's way easier than setting boundaries with folks that you don't have emotional attachment to. And so typically at work, your boundaries tend to be a little easier to set than when you start talking about the people who know you because they know the ins and out and how to say the right words to get you to feel guilty. And we'll talk about feeling guilty in a couple of minutes. Okay. So definitely make sure they're reasonable. And by communicating your expectations, you do create a sense of predictability. So Maria says, I'm beginning to understand. Absolutely. People will treat you as much as you tolerate. Absolutely. We actually teach people how to treat us. If we don't respect ourselves, others learn not to respect us. If we don't set boundaries and say, I'm tired, I've had enough, others think you don't. They really do think you enjoy doing all that work, all the extra work and all the things that nobody else wants to do. They really think you enjoy it. Like, yeah, she'll do it. She doesn't mind. So that means that you have to be assertive. We talk about assertiveness when you start sharing those boundaries, right? Which is the next thing here. Assertive communication when discussing your boundaries is crucial to be assertive, not aggressive, right? Because if you become aggressive with someone who loves being argumentative and aggressive, it can just go boom and nothing gets accomplished. So you want to be assertive versus aggressive, right? And of course, for Black women, this is a thing because if we are aggressive, people call us an angry Black woman. Shoot, sometimes when we're assertive, people will still call us an angry Black woman, but that's okay. Be assertive, all right? And be assertive and be clear in your communication. You don't want to be wishy washy. Oh, yeah, well, you got to be clear and assertive because there are people who are manipulators and they'll just bulldoze right over you. So you got to be clear and you got to be assertive about your expectations. And so really, you want to use those I statements, right? Because I statement doesn't blame someone, about what's going on. It just says, here's how I'm feeling. I'm owning my feelings and this is what I'm labeling them as. I'm not accusing you of anything, right? Instead of saying you're so stupid and I'm sick and tired of you being up in my space at my desk touching my stuff. Although you may want to say that sometimes, it's better way to say that is, I feel uncomfortable when you're in my personal space, right? I just feel very uncomfortable when you're in my personal space. It feels like my personal space is being invaded. I need more privacy, or I need you to do, I need this space to do that. And it's very clear. Sometimes people are not like in your things, but they're constantly in your face. And so oftentimes at work, that's a problem if you're a people pleaser because people consistently come in your office and you can't get anything done because they think, hey, she doesn't mind, she doesn't say anything, so I'm going to get what I need. And so really that clear communication really helps to minimize your anxiety, and then it reduces misunderstandings and potential conflicts, right? So the next one is all about explaining your reasoning, and so we'll really, you know, I'm always careful with this when I say it like that. Detailed explanations are not necessary. So you do not need to go because I don't want you to do this because that because you don't need to do all of that. Share the reasoning for setting the boundaries. It can help others understand where you're coming from, which of course can alleviate misunderstandings and reduce potential conflicts. which ultimately eases your anxiety. So always be concise, be straightforward when you're explaining your perspective. However, here's a caveat where I'm always careful with folks. There are some people that are very argumentative or they're very manipulative and they're really good at twisting your words. So when you are dealing with someone like that who's very argumentative, they like to manipulate your words and turn things around, just stick to the sort of I statements. I feel this, so you need to that. I feel this, so that. You don't want to get into an argument. I know for me, I'm not a great person with arguments. And I've had clients before that I have to say, why do you keep arguing? It's not your That's not your specialism. You're not an argumentative person. So why keep playing on a playground you're never going to win on? Don't argue. Just do not argue. You state your boundary. Thank you, C. Clark. She says, good point. Yes, you state the boundary with the I statement, label that boundary, done, period. No becomes a complete sentence. You don't want to go on elaborate explanations because the more you talk, the more they get your words and they twist them to say something that you don't mean. So you don't want to keep giving them ammunition. State the boundary, state assertively, and go quiet. See what I did there? I went quiet. Most people don't like to go quiet. This is something I teach my clients to do, and they're always amazed when it works. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, and people want to jump in and fill the space. State your boundary and go quiet. I don't need an explanation. I'm good and grown. I do not need an explanation. Because some folks, again, they will twist your words and turn them around and have you feeling frustrated. And at the end of the day, they get you to do what they want you to do anyway, which then makes you angry. So definitely stick to those assertive statements to protect your boundaries. And so here's another one that I really struggle with when I started setting boundaries. It's managing guilt. Again, if you are a people pleaser, it depends on, especially for women, we're often socialized to make other people comfortable to do for people, and some of us are just good natured, just good natured from the heart. We just like to give. And so when we start setting boundaries, though, it's very common to feel guilty when setting boundaries, especially when you're used to prioritizing everyone else's needs over yours. But that guilt contributes to anxiety. If you let the guilt go on, your anxiety increases, and then it makes it uncomfortable for you to set boundaries. You have to remind yourself that setting boundaries is actually healthy and it's a necessary practice because it protects you. Boundaries don't, you see hear people say, I put a boundary around him. We don't put boundaries around other people. Our boundaries are for us to protect our well being, not other folks. And obviously, if you have kids, you create boundaries to take care of your kids. But we're talking about, adults here. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. So you shouldn't feel guilty about taking care of yourself. It's just an essential aspect of maintaining your overall well being. Because if you don't, people will walk over you. They will walk over you, right? And the only break you will get is when you fall into the grave. You get sick and you die. I kid you not. My mother talked about this often, that she did not want people standing over her grave going, she sacrificed everything in this world and she always did for everybody else. My mother's like, don't do that. I don't want to do that. I want to live my life here and I want to live it in peace and I want to feel okay now versus, people asking and do this for me, do this, and all of a sudden you're stressed out, you're stroked out, you're in a nursing home or you die, and then people are like, oh, I got to find someone else to use. Now, how dare you to get sick on me? So, you want to practice self-compassion and remember that your needs are every bit as valid as everyone in your office and everyone in your personal life and everyone else in your family life. Again, I understand boundaries when you start setting with people that you have emotional attachments to. It's a little bit more challenging. But over time, this mindset can really alleviate the anxiety associating with feeling like people are walking over you and not adhering to your boundaries. Right? And so, really, in conclusion, setting boundaries is about protecting you, not someone else. It's about protecting you. Setting and maintaining boundaries is a transformative journey that does require dedication and perseverance. Again, if you're a people pleaser like me, out of the gate, I used to cry. I used to feel guilty. I don't have that problem anymore, but out of the gate, I did. And that's why, I enlisted someone to help me through that process, right? And although it may not always be easy, it is crucial to stand your ground. Once you set a boundary, keep it, because once you open up the gate to let someone through, everybody else will like bum rush you and come through. Like, she don't really need it. She doesn't really mean that. Okay. So it's crucial to stand your grounds and communicate your boundaries effectively, even when you're faced with resistance. Some people will be a thorn in your side, but as long as you hold out, eventually you're teaching them how to treat you. You're teaching them to adhere to your boundaries. And by doing so, you actually empower yourself to lay the foundation for a healthier and more fulfilling personal and work relationships. It goes both ways, right? Again, this is what I help folks do, because oftentimes when people don't like their jobs, don't like what they're doing, sometimes it's they have no boundaries. And so when I start listening to the client, I start writing down, like, let me take all my notes here because we need some boundaries set, right? And so as you continue on this path, you'll likely experience reduced anxiety and an increased sense of self-worth, because you're not resentful, you don't feel helpless, you don't feel like people are using you, and you're not speaking up for yourself, right? And so remember that you do have the right to protect your well-being and establish boundaries that promote mutual respect and understanding. So I do encourage you to take action today. Reflect on your personal boundaries. Do you have boundaries? Do you not have boundaries? Right? And when you decide on your boundaries, communicate assertively, communicate those, and then embrace a positive change that comes with being able to take that deep breath and relax and not feel so anxious all the time because people are consistently dumping every and anything on you, right? Set those healthy boundaries. So, really start that journey towards a more empowered and fulfilling life. And so that's what I have for you on today's video. If you found this information helpful, be sure to give this video a thumbs up or like it. And you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and you'll get, notified every time I drop new content. So, and don't forget to click that notification bell so that you never miss an update. I'm trying to watch my comments over here at the same time. The camera's here, but my comments over there, right? And so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which starts a whole new month. You really want to be here for next month's videos, right? And so if you've been reading the news, you've probably heard different reports in different articles that have come out. You're so welcome. So C. Clark says, thank you. You have probably seen there's been a lot of discussion really recently around loneliness. Of course, just being the social media age, but also with COVID. But here's the thing. We're going to delve into loneliness next month because Black women progressing their way to the top, they understand what that loneliness is, right? My June series is all about the lonely climb, how Black women can feel isolated on their way traversing, going up that corporate ladder. It happens. So Maria says, thank you, Maria. Maria says, this session was much needed. She needs to hear that. Thank you. And so again, do come back and see me next month, because it's not only Black women. You know that and well, you probably don't know, I have clients of all races, colors, and creeds, right? And so when I say Black women, women of color experience this, because so many times we're the only one at the top, or in the office, we're the only one in the room, or the only one or two. It can get lonely feeling like you don't have someone else to be there. And so I found it very interesting, because I have this conversation with my clients quite a bit, that women often feel lonely in that room. They feel lonely in that position. And so I just, it's part of the bigger series when you're talking about all the information about loneliness. I want to narrow this down to how Black women feel lonely when they're climbing that corporate ladder. It can get extremely lonely. So we'll talk about, what the experiences are. We'll also talk about what some resolutions are and what can we do so that we can be happy. Because you can't have it all, like Oprah Winfrey said. You can have it all, you can't have it all at once. But we do want to have a happy career and be happy in our personal lives and be happy in our relationships, right? Let's talk about that because there are a lot of women at the top that are lonely, and this is not necessarily talked about a lot. I know that I've been in the room with women and we start opening up and talking, it's talked about there, but on a larger scale, we don't talk about loneliness when we're climbing that corporate ladder. As a woman of color, you're the only one or only one of two. So that's my June series. Be back here same time next Wednesday night, 8:35 Eastern Time, 7:35 Central Time, and 5:35 Pacific Standard Time. And let's talk about that climb on the ladder, climbing up that ladder, what to do when it feels lonely, and the whole point is so you don't feel like you're the only one. It happens, but let's talk about what we need to do about it. All right. Thank you for joining. So C. Clark says, great topic. I'll be back. You're describing my experience as a Black female leader now. Yes, this is it. This is why. And it's funny, I start seeing all these articles on loneliness. I said, they stole my topic. That's my topic for June. But there's plenty to be said on this, and I just want to do a different take on it. So do join me for June, and I'll give you a list of all the lives that I'll be doing for June, and let's really engage in conversation and see how we can do better among ourselves and to support each other. All right. So I will see you next week. Take care, and thanks for joining.